Okay, so people in my little circle of subscriptions keep disrespecting Anita Sarkeesian's Feminist Frequency video on the top 5 creepy/sexist Christmas songs. I have a more positive take on the issue, so I thought I'd share my thoughts and offer some other creepy Christmas songs. The discussed song that seems to have the most controversy is All I Want for Christmas Is You. She says it's sexist for promoting the pervasive idea that women must be in romantic relationships with men, and that this be the primary focus of women's lives. Critics of her analysis say that the song specifically evokes someone who is in love with another person, someone who's been absent from the speaker's life for quite some time, so her wanting him for Christmas is perfectly legitimate. I'm inclined to agree, but Anita Sarkeesian has since clarified in an annotation that this is only an example of this larger social issue. So basically she didn't present the argument well the first time and has since clarified. Okay? However, I do disagree with her assertion that when the song is sung by a man, the context of the song changes enough that it sounds like the speaker is a stalker.
It's not any less creepy when a man sings it because the lyrics could be interpreted as bordering on stalker territory.
The fact that it was sung by a woman gives it a culturally imbued status that doesn't really descend into stalker territory. In a patriarchal society, men are considered to be at a higher level than women, so men have this kind of power that can be used for good or evil, while the weaker women are considered to only be good or be good by default. If the song originated with a male singer, it would have this ambiguous vibe that could be stalkery or not. And then if a woman were to sing it, it would be at this level, so it would not come across as stalkery. And I don't think that the reverse holds true. Because if the man sings the woman's song, he goes down to her level. And it wouldn't come across as stalkery so much as him going into the romantic idealization of the chick flick genre, which was considered wholesome or at least tame. Now, if the song were sung by a man who was individually creepy, like Spike in seasons 5 and 6 of Buffy the Vampire Slayer, it would inherit his creepiness and be a stalker song by result. However, that is only because Spike himself is a creepy person and nothing to do with his gender. If Yuno from Future Diary were to sing the song, it would also be stalkery. Individual identity has the influence. I agree with some of the criticism of her video that in order to have a progressive perspective, we need to look beyond how things are perceived in contemporary culture. The reason feminism needs to be around is that the culture is flawed, so we shouldn't cite cultural perception as reality. I think a good example of this is actually described in another Feminist Frequency video, the Hunger Games movie versus the book.
It was disturbing that the art directors chose to have effeminate and apparently queer men exist only as a part of the decadent, superficial, and rather sociopathic ruling class society.
This kind of thing highlights how our culture is so messed up with regard to views of gender, and that's what should be criticized rather than the things perceived as bad. With regard to I Saw Mommy Kissing Santa Claus, I interpret it as the kid's dad is Santa Claus, and the kid doesn't realize that Santa Claus is an illusion, so he thinks that his mom's cheating on his dad with Santa. It's supposed to be a cute song about the innocence of childhood, where the kid is so convinced that Santa is a real person that he doesn't even conceive of the possibility that his dad could be dressed as Santa. I actually do see it as creepy, but for another reason. This song, along with many others, makes light of kids believing in Santa to a strong degree. The legend of Santa is a culture-wide conspiracy in which all of the adults lie to all of the kids about there being this big, lovable guy who flies around on a reindeer-drawn sleigh, giving them their toys on Christmas instead of their parents. It's considered a privileged time in one's life to believe this big lie about how the world works, as if the world isn't awesome enough already. And then the disbelief in Santa becomes a big thing one needs to have in order to successfully age into a young adult. You're seen as a weaker person if you believe something that every adult in the country told you was fact. What a horrible thing to do to people! Is it any wonder that people believe outlandish things like the government concealing that the world is run by aliens? We train people to disregard people who should be trustworthy sources of information. As for it's beginning to look a lot like Christmas, I agree with her entirely. Most criticisms I've seen of that don't have much content. It's just, oh come on, or what an overreaction, without any real description on why that's an overreaction. I think it's because people don't listen to the lyrics, they only listen to the chorus, which they can sing along to, and then just kind of mumble their way through the rest. It's beginning to look a lot like Christmas. Da 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 da. Most people I've met are like this, including me. My dad, however, listens to every single lyric spoken, and he's always pointing out weird crap that the songwriters chose to include. I think people's reactions to the Feminist Frequency criticism are based in thinking it's an overreaction to listen seriously to the parts that most just dismiss as filler. I submit Jingle Bells as a contrast. Jingle Bells is generally not sung in its entirety anymore, and probably because the full song would come across as disturbing to modern listeners. Basically, the speaker tells the girl he's interested in about how some guy humiliated him, and he got over it by whipping a malnourished, abused horse that can't even walk straight. My equestrian mother does not like this song, but that part never makes the airwaves because most people don't like that kind of depiction of animal abuse, while the constrictive gender roles and It's Beginning to Look a Lot Like Christmas are still popular. There are a lot of classic songs that have disturbing lyrics if you bother to pay attention to them. These songs were penned in a different time, and societal progression means that these songs are going to sound increasingly backward. It's good to challenge these old ideas so that they're not accepted just because they come from classic media. With regard to Santa Baby, I think it's problematic, but that the sultry tone in which it's sung is much more problematic than the materialistic element.
This song might seem cute and sweet, and some have even tried to make it sexy.
What do you mean even? It's always been sexy. It's humorous in that it's depicting the speaker lusting after Santa Claus of all people, but it still has the woman lavishing her attention on a male figure in a very sexual manner. It's not so much what she says as it is how she says it. Since I first heard it, I can practically hear her saying, "and make love to me," after urging Santa down the chimney. The whole begging for expensive items is relentless flirting, and the song is set up to allow male listeners to imagine themselves as the object of affection instead of old Saint Nick. Everyone seems to agree that Baby It's Cold Outside is creepy and sexist, so I'll just let the Feminist Frequency commentary stand for itself. I also recommend Let It Snow as the anti-Baby It's Cold Outside. It has the same sort of playful nature of blaming the cold weather for not wanting to disrupt a romantic moment, but it has the bonus of having both people actually want to be there. To me, the most disturbing Christmas songs are the religious ones, including the ones where Santa Claus is presented as the children's version of God. The moral system of the Abrahamic religions is based on a barbaric punishment-reward system, in which the mob boss of a god says, "Worship me or I'll torture you forever. But if you worship me, I'll love you." The figure of Santa Claus is frequently presented as a toned-down version of God. He'll either give you gifts or some kind of punishment, such as a lump of coal. I believe in France, Santa would actually give kids a spanking if they're bad. So yay, promotion of child abuse through religious figures. In Austria and some other European countries, Santa is actually accompanied by a devil who will whip kids and take them straight to hell. Though not quite that bad, the modern US Santa still maintains that authoritative dynamic. A popular Christmas song to employ this is Santa Claus is Coming to Town.
He sees you when you're sleeping. He knows when you're awake. He knows if you've been bad or good, so be good for goodness sake.
Santa Claus is presented as an omnipresent force who judges your actions, implying an objective morality as with God. The idea of someone watching you when you're sleeping is generally associated with someone of a nefarious nature, a stalker. However, children are taught to regard this presence of authority as good, that people constantly be observed by an objective moral authority who judges you, and you better obey, is the message of a tyrannical government seeking to take away the legitimacy of personal privacy and alternative interpretations of morality. Kids are taught to ignore their own moral compasses when the concept of being good is associated with being obedient. This is part of a general societal meme that leads to abuses when people fail to criticize their leaders, with consequences as grave as war crimes, or the slow slide toward fascism that the United States seems to be taking. Allowing the requirement for commercial air travel that people either submit to invasive body scans or groping is part of this idea that the authority is something good and just, and you must let it into your personal space to inspect you and judge you. If you find objection to this idea, you are not good. So obey for goodness sake. Further, the lyrics,
You better watch out, you better not cry, better not pout, I'm telling you why. Santa Claus is coming to town.
deny children the legitimacy of crying or pouting. They are presented as immoral things done only to negatively affect parents. Personal sadness is dismissed as unimportant, while the parent's discomfort to the effects of that sadness is presented as the important part. This is similar to how older kids are harassed by their peers for showing signs of sadness, for showing superficial similarity to the emo subculture. When someone shows signs of sadness, everyone mocks them, saying, "Oh, don't be so emo." This societal backlash against showing signs of personal sadness is relevant to feminism for the way that it disproportionately affects men, as it is widely believed that showing emotion must be feminine, so men should be stoic. Not to mention that men can consider women crying as an intentional effort to manipulate them emotionally.
Can you cry? Sometimes I feel better when I cry, but there might be rest issues.
Crying is blackmail. Good girlfriends don't cry.
Oh,
We should promote the idea that it's okay to cry when you're sad. Anita Sarkeesian would probably like the last part of that song, though, as it describes several toys without mentioning which genders would want to play with them, and then the kids in Girl and Boyland work cooperatively. The religious Christmas carols We Three Kings of Orient Are and Down in Yon Forest have some pretty gruesome imagery and are creepy as a result. We Three Kings of Orient Are has the following verse. Well, isn't that upbeat? It's not nearly as bad as Down in Yon Forest. That whole song is gruesome. It's about a wounded knight bleeding to death and then a dog lapping up his blood.
And at the bed's foot there lies a hound. The bells of paradise I heard them ring, and licking the blood as it daily runs down. And I love my Lord Jesus above anything.
Again, people probably just listen to the chorus, which is about loving Jesus, and don't pay attention to the meat of the song. But the most pervasive creepiness and sexism found in Christmas songs has to be the promotion of Christianity itself. Songs that promote the worship of Jesus promote the worship of a misogynistic God who only made a covenant with men and has made several misogynistic statements.
Women should remain silent in the churches. They are not allowed to speak, but must be in submission as the law says. If they want to inquire about something, they should ask their own husbands at home, for it is disgraceful for a woman to speak in the church. The head of every man is Christ, and the head of the woman is man, and the head of Christ is God. A man ought not to cover his head, since he is the image and glory of God, but the woman is the glory of man. For man did not come from woman, but woman from man. Neither was man created for woman, but woman for man. I also want women to dress modestly, with decency and propriety, not with braided hair or gold or pearls or expensive clothes, but with good deeds, appropriate for women who profess to worship God. A woman should learn in quietness and full submission. I do not permit a woman to teach or to have authority over a man. She must be silent. For Adam was formed first, then Eve, and Adam was not the one deceived. It was the woman who was deceived and became a sinner. Wives, submit to your husbands as to the Lord. For the husband is the head of the wife, as Christ is the head of the church, his body, of which he is the Savior. Now as the church submits to Christ, so also wives should submit to their husbands in everything. Wives, in the same way, be submissive to your husbands, so that, if any of them do not believe the word, they may be won over without words by the behavior of their wives, when they see the purity and reverence of your lives. Your beauty should not come from outward adornment, such as braided hair, and the wearing of gold jewelry and fine clothes. Instead, it should be that of your inner self, the unfading beauty of a gentle and quiet spirit, which is of great worth in God's sight. For this is the way the holy women of the past who put their hope in God used to make themselves beautiful. They were submissive to their own husbands, like Sarah, who obeyed Abraham and called him her master.
Also, let's not forget that Jesus is the manifestation of the God of the Old Testament, and he has said that all of the old rules will still remain.
Do not think that I have come to abolish the law of the prophets. I have not come to abolish them, but to fulfill them. I tell you the truth. Until heaven and earth disappear, not the smallest letter, not the least stroke of a pen will by any means disappear from the law until everything is accomplished. Anyone who breaks one of the least of these commandments and teaches others to do the same will be called least in the kingdom of heaven. But whoever practices and teaches these commands will be called great in the kingdom of heaven. All your words are true. All your righteous laws are eternal.
For eating the fruit of the tree of knowledge of good and evil, God punished Eve, and by extension all women, with painful childbirth.
I will greatly increase your pains in childbearing. With pain you will give birth to children. Your desire will be for your husband, and he will rule over you.
And he didn't do a similar thing to Adam. The childbirth then makes women unclean for a period which is significantly longer if she gives birth to a girl instead of a boy.
A woman who becomes pregnant and gives birth to a son will be ceremonially unclean for 7 days, just as she is unclean during her monthly period. Then the woman must wait 33 days to be purified from her bleeding. She must not touch anything sacred or go to the sanctuary until the days of her purification are over. If she gives birth to a daughter, for 2 weeks the woman will be unclean as during her period. Then she must wait 66 days to be purified from her bleeding.
The Bible is full of these examples of misogyny, not to mention general nastiness towards people, like with the Great Flood and the constant threat of hell. Worship me or else. Songs that glorify submission to this character are akin to the songs sung by Nazis to glorify Hitler, and are not feminist by any stretch of the imagination. So I imagine you're all thinking, what songs do you like? Christmas songs I like are secular and promote a general sense of goodwill, honor the fun environment, or just getting together with family. Specifically, a few I like are Let It Snow, Jingle Bell Rock, Rocking Around the Christmas Tree, We Wish You a Merry Christmas, Deck the Halls, White Christmas, that was written by a Jew actually, Over the River and Through the Woods, Winter Wonderland, and Silver Bells. Silver Bells does have a line about Santa though. My favorite song, however, is Tim Minchin's White Wine in the Sun.
I'm looking forward to Christmas, though I'm not expecting a visit from Jesus. I'll be seeing my dad, my brother and sisters, my gran and my mum. They'll be drinking white wine in the sun.
It sums up my feelings towards Christmas in general, and it gets really, really sweet when he starts singing to his infant daughter and assuring her that her family would always be there for her. I listen to it often on the bus to school. I tear up. It is so sweet.
You better watch out, you better not cry.
Oh, shut up!